Hello, fellow pondologists. Welcome to the 5th episode of the Species Spotlight. In this series, we are doing a deep dive into the specifics of managing some of the most exciting and sought-after game fish for your pond. You'll get the specialized knowledge and my own tried and true strategies. Whether you're dreaming of dinner plate crappies or a hard-fighting smallmouth bass fishery, you'll have exactly what you need to confidently manage your pond. Each episode is a deep dive into one specific game fish and their allies. Allies meaning what other species they do well with and their preferred forage species. We'll cover their unique needs, stocking strategies, how to create their perfect habitat, and how to manage their populations to reach your goals. Goals give direction, but systems make progress. And for each fish species, we've got a management system for you. So make sure that notepad is handy because we're jumping right into the secrets of growing your dream fishery. Please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so that you get notified when the next episode drops. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions and if there's something in particular that you'd like me to cover in another episode. Smallmouth bass. Just saying the name gets serious anglers excited. They are famous for their incredible fighting spirit. While many ponds, focus on largemouth, there's a growing wave of pond owners that want to manage for these awesome alternative species. But you can't just treat them like largemouth. Smallmouth have very distinct ecological needs. Your standard largemouth pond setup just won't cut it for smallmouth bass. To get a smallmouth fishery really thriving in your pond, you need to shift your focus and cater to their specific needs for habitat, food, and water quality. Unlike their largemouth cousins, smallmouth exhibit distinct behaviors and habitat preferences that require a sort of specialized approach. This episode explores the nuances of managing smallmouth bass, such as their habitat. What kind of habitat do they actually need? We'll look at water quality, also stocking strategies, how to introduce them for the best success, and also population management. You want to keep things balanced for the long haul. My goal is to give you the power and knowledge to establish and sustain an amazing smallmouth bass population. Their preferred habitat is fundamentally based on rocky substrates, gravel, and pebble rock of various sizes. They construct nests on gravel or hard-bottom substrates. This preference extends to rocky shorelines, ledges, and areas with steep drop-offs in your pond. The male smallmouth is actually the home builder. He meticulously crafts a nest like a little crater in these rocky areas. These rocks aren't just for spawning, they're also vital cover and prime hunting grounds, especially for one of their favorite snacks, the crayfish, the crawfish, crawdads, mud bugs, mini freshwater lobsters, whatever you want to call them. If your pond doesn't have enough rocky habitat, you're going to have a very, very tough time getting your smallmouth to reproduce and thrive. Ponds dug out, with borrow pits often have sandy, gravelly bottoms, which can be ideal ponds for smallmouth. But if your pond has a typical clay liner or soil that's common to the area, you might need to bring in some rocks. Actively adding rocks of all different sizes can create that essential habitat that they need. A few creative ways to enhance rocky structure in your pond include rock piles, submerged rocky islands, gravel beds in shallow areas. Place gravel beds around 3 feet deep for murky ponds, 4 to 6 feet for clearer ponds. I'll even suggest constructing, rocky points and fishing jetties lined with riprap. Artificial spawning baskets with gravel can work if natural substrate is lacking. So, adding rocks at various depths will give them access year round. Rocks are also great, but keep in mind that habitat diversity is key. Aquatic vegetation, some submerged plants provide cover and support the food web. Too much can hinder angling and make it difficult for the smallies to effectively capture their prey fish. Try to keep vegetation coverage near 20%. If it exceeds 30% coverage, you'll definitely want to implement some sort of control measure. The topic of vegetation control is too deep to cover in this episode, but you can learn more about different types of vegetation control in the Ultimate Pond Management Playbook, available on our website. Other structures that will enhance habitat include submerged logs, brush piles, artificial structures, and a cheap and easy option is actually suspending a 2x6 above the bottom, held up by 2 cinder blocks on each side. Lay some gravel underneath the lumber and it'll be a smallmouth hotspot, I promise. Smallies are a bit particular about their water. Their optimal temperature is between 60 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit. They need good levels of dissolved oxygen, ideally at 5 parts per million. Now remember, warmer water holds less oxygen, so if your pond is in a warmer area, you might need a deeper pond, or even think about installing some type of aeration system to keep those oxygen levels up, especially during hot spells. Clear water is generally preferred. It influences spawning site selection and hunting efficiency. If your pond doesn't have all of the aforementioned characteristics, but you want smallmouth bass, fortunately for you, with a little elbow grease, you can turn your pond into a smallmouth bass friendly pond. You can haul rocks and boulders in of all sizes and place them strategically in and around your pond. You can improve the water clarity by using certain water clarifying products. You can ensure that there's enough dissolved oxygen by installing an aeration system. In the Ultimate Pond Management Playbook, I go into great detail on how to improve your water clarity and quality, so make sure you check that course out if you really want to up your pondology knowledge. Remember, smallmouth have smaller mouths. Remember, smallmouth have smaller mouths. Smallmouth have smaller mouths than largemouth. Duh. This affects what they eat. A crucial component of a successful stocking strategy for smallmouth bass involves the introduction of the appropriate forage fish species alongside the bass. These forage fish serve as a vital food source, supporting the growth and survival of all of the smallmouth. Think about fathead minnows. They can be a good option for providing an initial food supply, particularly for young, newly stocked smallmouth bass. Golden shiners, which grow to a larger size and they have a greater potential to establish themselves in ponds with sufficient aquatic vegetation. And they can offer a more sustainable forage base because of that. Red ear sunfish are also highlighted as an advantageous forage species in smallmouth bass ponds due to their relatively lower reproductive rates when compared to other sunfish like bluegill, which That helps to prevent overpopulation and maintain a balanced predator-prey dynamic. A well thought out forage fish stocking plan tailored to the specific needs of smallmouth bass and the characteristics of the pond is essential for establishing a healthy and productive fishery. What's on the menu? They eat crayfish, crawfish, crawdads, mud bugs, freshwater mini lobsters, whatever you want to call them. Smallies love crawfish. Insects are always on the menu, pretty much for any fish species. They're pretty opportunistic that way. Smaller, skinnier fish like fathead minnows, golden shiners, yellow perch, threadfin shad, juvenile gizzard shad. If you're thinking about forage fish for your smallmouth pond, red ear sunfish can be a better choice than bluegill. Why? Red ears don't reproduce as crazily as bluegill do, which helps prevent an overpopulation of prey. So the takeaway for you, stock a variety of forage that fits what a smallmouth can actually eat. Don't just rely on the standard bluegill plan. All right, let's talk about getting these bronzebacks into your pond the right way. The golden rule: no largemouth bass if smallmouth are your main goal. This is probably the most important piece of advice for a dedicated smallmouth bass fishery. Why? Largemouth are often more aggressive, they eat similar things, and they can outcompete the smallmouth for food and space. They will eat and eliminate juvenile smallmouth. This can lead to your smallmouth population struggling or even disappearing over time. Now, some folks might say that you can stock adult smallmouth, between 10 and 12 inches to a pond with existing largemouth for a little variety, but it's likely your smallmouth won't reproduce much, if at all, in that situation. So you'd probably have to keep restocking them year after year or every other year. So if you want a thriving smallmouth population, manage your pond just for them without largemouth in the picture. That's the ticket. That's the only ticket if you're not thinking outside of the box. If you stick around until the end, I'll share an outside of the box management strategy with you that allows you to have both largemouth and smallmouth in the same pond without inhibiting growth or reproduction of the smallmouth population. Stick around. For initial stocking rates, I usually stock between 25 and 100 per acre, depending on a few parameters. One, if your pond has the perfect habitat for smallmouth bass and will be the only predator in your pond, you can stock at the lower rate of 25 per acre. Two, if your pond lacks ideal habitat for smallies spawning, but will be the only predator, I'd stock at 50 per acre. Three, if your pond has ideal smallmouth habitat but will be cohabitating with largemouth bass, I'd stock larger smallmouth bass at a rate of 75 per acre the first year and then 25 per acre every other year. Number four, if your pond lacks ideal smallmouth habitat and will be cohabitating the pond with largemouth, I'd stock larger smallmouth bass at a rate of 100 per acre the first year and 50 per acre every other year. These stocking rate recommendations are just a starting point for you to work from. Don't follow these as gospel because everyone's pond is different. It is your pond and you can make little tweaks to these recommendations. If you're out there spending time at your pond regularly and constantly monitoring the fishery, you'll have a much better understanding than I would of what your pond needs or can handle. I will also mention a good rule of thumb: When stocking smallmouth bass into a pond that has largemouth bass, you want to remove 5 largemouth bass for every smallmouth bass that you stock. Timing is crucial. When you stock can make a huge difference in how well they do. Cooler is better. Stock in the fall or spring when water temperatures are below 65 degrees. You'll want to avoid stocking in the heat. Don't stock them if it's hotter than 75 degrees Fahrenheit. This is super stressful for fish and can lead to unwanted mortality. You'll want to acclimate. This is very important before you release your new fish. You have to let them get used to the pond water temperature. You want to slowly mix the pond water into the transport tanks for about 30 minutes. You want the water in the transport tanks to be within 2 degrees Fahrenheit of the pond water temperature. This prevents temperature shock. Follow these timing and acclimation tips and your new smallmouth will have a much better chance of surviving and thriving. Monitoring is key. Angler catch records, relative abundance, size distribution, and condition are key metrics to monitor. Seining or cast netting for young of the year in the shallows to keep track of recruitment will let you know if your smallmouth are spawning successfully and having recruits. Do this at least 4 times a year to make sure they are in great condition and are getting bigger each time you sample. You'll also want to closely monitor the baitfish abundance and size distribution so that you can actually foresee potential problems before they become a problem. For example, if your sample shows that your smallmouth are trending positively in April, but you see that there's a lack of bite-sized baitfish, you can proactively stock some more baitfish before it has a negative impact on the growth of the smallmouth. That will also tell you if you have too many predators or not, or enough suitable habitat or not for the baitfish to hide. If reproduction of your smallmouth is good, selective harvest might be needed to prevent overpopulation and stunting. You'll want to cull smaller to medium-sized fish to allow others to grow. Don't get caught up in the catch and release mindset, even with smallmouth bass. I know it's a tough pill to swallow sometimes, but there's only so much room in a pond. You might as well help the bigger ones get bigger and take the smaller ones out. Slow growth in the bass population could indicate an insufficient supply of appropriate forage and an overabundance of bass, leading to increased competition for limited resources or underlying issues with water quality. Just identifying and addressing these root causes is crucial for improving growth rates for your smallmouth. Inconsistent reproduction can also be a concern and might be influenced by a lack of suitable rocky spawning habitat or predation on eggs or fry by other pond dwellers or competition with other fish species. Ensuring that adequate rocky habitat is available and managing the populations of other fish in the pond can help promote more consistent reproduction. Additionally, if bluegill populations become excessively high, they may compete with smaller smallmouth bass for resources or even interfere with their spawning activities, potentially requiring periodic removal to help maintain a healthy balance. So, effective management of smallmouth bass ponds requires a proactive approach to diagnosing the underlying causes of any observed problems and implementing targeted solutions to address them. Managing ponds for smallmouth bass requires a dedicated approach that acknowledges their unique ecological needs, which differ from those of the more commonly managed largemouth bass. Key principles for successful smallmouth bass management include prioritizing the creation of rocky habitat for spawning and cover, maintaining great water quality with adequate dissolved oxygen, especially in warmer regions in the south, stocking appropriate forage species, and avoid co-stocking with largemouth bass for those seeking a dedicated smallmouth bass fishery. In summary, here are the key takeaways from this episode. Number one, assess the pond suitability, evaluate your pond's depth, water source, and the potential for introducing significant rocky habitat. Smallmouth bass thrive in environments with ample rock and great water quality. Number two, actively enhance habitat. Introduce rocks of various sizes, like gravel, rubble, boulders, to create spawning areas, cover, and foraging habitat. Even consider building rock piles, submerged islands, or adding gravel beds. Number three, stock the appropriate forage. Select and stock forage fish that align with the dietary preferences of smallmouth bass, such as fathead minnows, golden shiners, or red ear sunfish. Number four, avoid largemouth bass. For a dedicated smallmouth bass fishery, it is generally best to avoid stocking largemouth bass in the same pond due to potential competition and predation. Number five, monitor the population regularly. Your smallmouth bass population needs to constantly be monitored through angling, noting the number and the size and the condition of the fish caught. Consider using seining techniques to assess reproductive success and overall population balance. Number six, implement a harvest plan. Develop and implement a harvest plan that aims to maintain a healthy and balanced size structure within the smallmouth bass population. This may involve selective harvesting of the smaller fish in a lot of the situations. Thank you very much for watching. If you gained something from this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Doing that helps grow this channel so I can keep making these videos for you guys. Feel free to ask any questions in the comments and let me know if there's something that you're interested in that you'd like me to cover in another episode. If you really want to take your pond knowledge to the next level, you'll have to check out the Ultimate Pond Management Playbook on our website. Now remember, you don't need a PhD or a master's degree to master the science of pondology. It's your pond, so don't let anyone tell you what you can and can't do with it. You can create your dream pond. You can be your own biologist.